Hey everybody, I'm the Gerbil, and in today's video I want to share what is actually my first GAC defensive review. It's not even a guide per se, so much as I'm showing you what I am placing on defense, which means if you run against me this GAC, you're probably going to crush me because here's what I'm putting this week and probably for all 3 weeks, but it does depend on a few things. I would also like to remind you that no one GAC video, offense or defense, is like the end-all be-all because there is so much variety and flexibility in this game, especially in 3v3, and because your roster and my roster and these people's rosters over here, they're all different too. So these are the people I tend to go to when I'm needing some guidance or help. But of course, there are many other great people out there. But thank you for watching this video, and hopefully you'll get something helpful for your GAC defense. Now, real fast, just a little bit of background. This was the last month of October, how I performed pretty good. I was 7 wins and 2 losses in 5v5. I'm currently Kyber 2. And the 3v3 before this, back in September, I was 5 and 4. For the last 2 months, what is that? 12 and 6. So that's good. 66% win rate versus CG's target of 50%. So I can't complain. Of course, before I do any 3v3 or 5v5 or any GAC event, I always like to go over to SWGOH.gg/GAC and check out like the meta. What is happening? So instead of trying to rack your brain and watch 500 different videos like mine and everyone else's, which please do watch, you can actually go see what's holding better than anything else. And you can sort this a variety of ways. And if I'm reading this chart, I screenshotted this yesterday on November the 9th. You can see that Lord Vader with Maul and Royal Guard, if I'm reading that right, have a 57% hold rate, which means they are beating more than half of the teams that go up against them. Or in other words, they're holding more than half the time. And as you go down the list, of course, maybe you don't have a GL. You can see there's Qui-Gon with Cam, which if you don't have a GL, you probably don't have Cam. But then you get to Gas, right? And you can see that the Gas is still holding 31% or 7. He's only being beat 7 out of every 10 attacks. And then you can also see the average number of banners your opponents are receiving. And I'm not actually sure what CVB is. I need to read into this more. But I just look at that percentage hold, and I initially structure my defense on this. Like, what is working for other people? And because when you're crowdsourcing this off of 100,000 or 200,000 battles, this is going to be way better than any anecdotal evidence you have. Like, for example, my Ewoks, I got 8 holds in 1 match alone. So anecdotally, like, I want to just keep putting my Ewoks on defense. But statistically, I know they're not actually likely to win that much. But there's some psychology behind why they are winning. So anyway, let's move on. In the top there, you can see that drop down right underneath my picture here. But you can see counters. Like, you can say, okay, well, I have this character. I don't know what to do with them. Well, you can look there and actually see who to attack, right? So say you're like, I don't know what to do with my Rebel Officer Leia. Well, you can go find out who does she actually counter. And I don't know if she counters anyone, but that's why that resource is there, and it's fabulous. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? So another thing I do before I place my defense is I always go scout my opponents. And in this case, for example, this is today's match. I'm going to lose if my opponent actually puts forth significant effort. They have 6 GLs. I have 3. And hypothetically, if they just put all 6 in defense, right, like 3 and 3, I'm probably going to lose because they could then just put rubbish characters with them and save all of their superior non-GL characters for offense. Yeah, I mean, that's the way it floats, but likely they're not going to do that. And so I do have a chance, all right? So strategy. Here's my defensive strategy. I have another 3v3 defense video I made where I actually go through and specifically talk about a lot of different teams that I use or don't use. But this one I want to talk a little bit about kind of psychology, because I structure my defense this time with 4 thoughts. First off, I want a tempting top row. I want my opponent to look at that top row and say, wow, that is a lot easier to attack than the bottom row. Why? If your opponent clears the top row, but then you clear their bottom row, the bottom row wins. It's just the way the points work out. You get more points for clearing the bottom row than you do the top row. So by encouraging them to attack the top row, even if they clear it, They then have to go and try to mop up the bottom row with diminished resources. They've already used at least 5 teams to clear that top row. And if they then run into a problem in the bottom and use their counter, they're out of luck and they're more likely to lose. So I deliberately make that top row more tempting. I also do that because I have a very strong fleet. Number one, fleets over GLs. Like, seriously. Your top source of crystals in this game is Fleet Arena. Fleets over GLs. Get the strong fleet, get to the top of the arena, get the daily crystal rewards. Then, more often than not, I win GAC events because my fleets are superior than my opponents. Almost always. So, I allow them to breach the top, hit the fleets where they usually fail. 2 weeks ago, in fact, I had an opponent, a Kyber 2 opponent, who did not defeat a single fleet in 4 attacks of mine. I mean, they didn't beat not one of my fleets. All right. So if you have a good fleet, if not, work towards it. Get 6-dot gold mods on all of your pilots. They can be crummy mods, doesn't matter. Just put a 6-dot gold mod on them. Maximize their abilities. Even if it's a crappy character, put a Zeta on it if you can afford it. I don't advise that for Omicrons though, right? But get the best fleet you can so that when they get through that front row, they lock themselves out by not being able to clear it. I almost always put Executor on defense, even if my opponent has Executor, and even if they have Profundity. And why? Because Profundity can be beat by several teams. Executor, consistently is a lot harder, I think, to defeat on defense, so I place it there. And I'll get to that in a second. Now, in the lower row, I try to put a really scary, heavy defense, strong front wall. So you can see right now, I'm showing a Malik and I'm showing CLS. In the back row, I put sneaky things that have limited counters. And my hope is that between the tempting top row and the iron strong front row, you've used up the best counters for the sneaky stuff in the back, like Radis, like Qui-Gon, right? So let's take a look at how I'm doing this. Okay, so here's my top row, my tempting targets. I got pretty much all Separatists, First Orders, and then a Bounty Hunter squad. Why? These are solid teams. Regardless what anyone else says, go to SWGOH again and check them out. Dooku, Asajj, Zombie. Yes, Zombie is needed to counter Lord Vader with Slicker and some other cool funky stuff. Zombie is just so plug and play in a lot of places with Daka, but Dooku puts himself into stealth. He'll also put Asajj into stealth, meaning that Zombie, whether she taunts or not, she's the only viable target. If you don't have AoEs, or a way to prevent stealth like Dengar, this team becomes really hard to beat, and it surprisingly gets quite a few holds. Hux with the double TIE Fighter pilots and an Omicron, maybe that's not the best lineup there, but that is one of the best Omicrons in GAC, at least in my opinion. It can be quite surprising. The Bounty Hunter squad there I have is just rubbish. I mean, not Bam, but classic Mando, he's got the instant kill one shot. But I don't really use it in 3v3. It doesn't really fit into my lineup and my combat strategies, so I put it there as a tempting target. Likewise, Gear 11 Newt, that is an interesting lineup because Jango will automatically go into defense or damage immunity, and what happens is if you go in there with like a turn meter removal team or a stun team, you can actually end up like timing out pretty quick by locking down Jango and him never taking a turn and having damage immunity. And even though it's a low gear Newt, you can't beat it, right? So the Newt Jango thing by itself is super good for defense. And then Grievous, well, there's a lot of ways to beat Grievous anymore, but between Grievous and B2 and even IG, who all three have AoEs, similar to B1 down below, AoE, right? Those AoEs are banner snipers. So even if they kill you, you are still going to snipe away banners. Hopefully you're going to hit all the enemies. You're going to strip away at least the 3 banners for protection. If you can get past that, you're going to strip away banners for health. And so your opponent is going to get less banners. So we got some sneaky but quite beatable defense here. And last time I checked, that Newt Jango and then the Dooku Zombie, those were both in the top 20 most effective holds last time I checked. I didn't look this month actually, but probably are. So let's say you break through my tempting, then you hit my fleets. Negotiator is still, I think, the second strongest holding fleet in the game. Executor is the number one most holding fleet in the game. Like, Executor mirror matches, you should be able to win 90% of the time if you know what you're doing. If you're button smashing, you're probably going to win 15 to 30% of the time, right? It's a mirror that you have to know what to do. Now, if you have a profundity, all bets are off, right? But most people don't have profundity still. So, Executor requires their Executor. Negotiator requires some other specific counters. Yes, it's getting easier to beat it, especially it looks like when Scythe comes out with the Grand Inquisitor, but whatever. Now, why Finalizer in the middle? Even a 6-star Finalizer. Why? Because it's just fast. It gets out ahead of a lot of other fleets, and it can be a very surprising team if the RNG goes right and Kylo just starts whomping down people with major hits. It's a really easy team to beat, but RNG can totally wreck you. And because the counters, the easiest counters, I think, in my personal opinion, for Finalizer are also what you would use for Negotiator. So Negotiator and Finalizer, in my opinion, they both have kind of the same counters. I could be totally wrong on that, but we move on. All right, front row, Iron Wall. Okay, again, back to the SWGOH. Bosk, not too hard to beat, especially with Finnick and Dengar. It's not a hard team. Finnick's going to hit pretty hard. Bosk is going to recover. Dengar's going to go into stealth and do Dengar stuff. Malgus, though, with Darth Revan and Bastila Shan, I think is one of the top 10 most holding teams in the game. You almost have to have a GL. A lot of teams just have no chance when you got those Omicrons on Malgus. So this is going to pretty much draw out a GL almost no matter what right there. The next one, Boba Fett with the 2 Hutt Cartel members. This one I'm just experimenting with. I actually have no idea how well this is going to work, but Chrysanthemum is going to automatically taunt because Boba Fett and Greedo are both Hutt Cartel members. And Greedo, who I haven't honestly used in forever, I am about to unlock Jabba the Hutt, and I figured, what the heck, let's see what's happening here. So in a 3v3 situation, Greedo, I think, actually is more effective than in a lot of places because he can theoretically one-shot anybody. He gets, I think, a 50% chance to attack again and again and again. He's going to crit at this relic level, and with the right Datacron, with the right Datacrons, you increase his critical damage. Boba Fett's increasing his critical damage. He's already got a high crit chance, and so what's going to happen is possibly he's going to just be like, pew, 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 you die. He also has a 100% turn meter removal ability that also steals that turn meter, gives it to himself to take those extra turns. And so this team, I think, is going to have high offense between the Relic 8 Boba, multiple attack Greedo, turn meeting stealing Greedo, ability block, AoE, banner stealing Jango, or Boba Fett, excuse me, and then a really, really hard to kill Chrysanthemum. So this one, I'm really eager to see how it performs. Now we switch over to my light sides, and we got Luke and Luke. These two are insanely good defensive teams. I mean, we're talking really good. The top one, Commander Luke, of course, you got a high chance for retribution. So anytime somebody attacks, they're going to counterattack a lot of times. That counterattack, you got a 1 in 3 target. Who are they hitting? Luke, C-3PO, or Chewie? If they hit Chewie, fine, they shoot back. If they hit Luke, they shoot back and Chewie assists, I believe. I don't know what it looks like in reverse, but I think so. 3PO, of course, he shares out his ability, or his stats, like 40% of the leaders. Put again the right Datacron on it with high crit damage or high armor penetration, and they just decimate. Now, the one below it, though, is the one that gets the most holds for me, ironically, besides my Ewoks. This one, the AI is pretty smart with. I can't remember what Luke's special ability is, but Hermit Yoda is super duper duper fast. So Hermit Yoda goes first, triggers Luke's special ability. All 3 of you guys attack. The enemy's turn meter, I think it drops it to 0. I'm not sure how that works, but then that guarantees that Old Ben takes a turn, at which point he ability blocks the opposing enemy team, and then Luke just starts hammering down on people, and then Yoda on his next turn applies that Master's Training, making Old Ben tankier, tankier, I guess if that's a word. And then Luke, of course, starts hitting a lot harder. And then once Luke gets that retribution on him also, he just starts whack, 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 dropping down the law. And this team gets an insane amount of holds. I think it's also in the top 10, top 15 on SWGOH. All right, so let's suppose you breach this. You get past Malgus. You get back past Jedi Master Luke. You easily take out my bounty hunters, I'm assuming. I have no idea how that goes. Then you get to Sneaky. So after you've got through all that stuff, you got to then come up against some teams that require some kind of specific, maybe not require, but benefit from some specific counters, right? So we got Mon Mothma, Qui-Gon, Fish, Iden, and Padme. Padme is not so hard, especially when you look at it and you see Cody and Ahsoka, and you're like, well, that's not going to be too challenging. But again, remember, Padme is a little sneaky. Anything that has a lot of assists is going to struggle against Padme. So a lot of your rebel teams are not going to work here. And if you've used those non-assisting teams like your own Darth Revan, you've used that, you're going to struggle on the back row with Padme. Fish is, well, if you have only Empire teams left, good luck with that. They're not going to win here. Iden, again, anything with a lot of assists. So we have kind of a double whammy between Padme and Iden on the same space, because anything assisting against Padme is boosting up that bonus protection. Anything assisting against Iden is healing and recovering protection down there against Stark and I think that's Range Trooper. Next, of course, I got my Qui-Gon over there. Qui-Gon is a pain to defeat no matter what. Yes, there's a lot of clear counters, Wampa, for example, but if the RNG doesn't go your way and you already used that Wampa or whatever, then you are out of luck. Mon Mothma, not too hard to beat. Again, a lot of people might throw Jawas at it, for example, but in 5v5, while that works, not so much here. 3v3, you have to be a little bit more meticulous in what you use. So this has been my strategy. And this is what's been working for me, mixing it up in various iterations. Tempting front top row, strong fleet, ironclad front row, sneaky manipulative back row. Anyway, maybe this works for you, maybe not. It's been great for me. Like I said, 66% win rate lately, even more 2 months ago. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'm the Gerbil. Give me a like and thumbs up if you did enjoy this, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.